Enlil don't have, his children are nomads on Earth. Because before he came, the Anunnaki had already divided Earth up into 3 regions. The land of Enki, we call it the motherland, Africa. It wasn't called Africa 500 years ago. It was called the Greater Sudan. Over here, we called it the Afar Inca. And we referred to ourselves as Amur Inca. Right? So Enlil's children, he Yahweh in the Bible. So he's promising his children that he gonna give them a homeland. That's his promise. The only way he can give them a homeland is he got to overthrow either Enki, or Isis, or Tahuti. Them the 3 regions of the earth, right? So when you look at the movement, when we look at the movement in ancient times, you can actually see the fingerprints of Anunnaki warfare. Most of us don't study warfare, therefore we have no way to understand how they weaponize everything we do against us, right? So his job and his son, Marduk, who was his first general he picked, and then his scientist son, Ninursin, right? These was the ones that he picked, a scientist and a soldier, to usurp one of these clans so they can have some land on Earth. They lost. They should have never fucked with Tahuti, and they probably could have been able to get by on Enki or Isis, but they can't get past Tahuti. In the exile of the Spanish Inquisition, right? So in the Spanish Inquisition, they kicked out of Europe, out of ISIS land, some people that we call Moors today. We call them dirty Moors over here. The good Moors is the ones of us who has to fight them and take their pheasants, like you did, right? The Moors shouldn't be offended. They should celebrate Noble Drew Ali effort, even though the Moorish Science Temple was infiltrated. So this is what made Elijah Muhammad form the Nation of Islam. And if you know, Noble Drew Ali had a Mufti staff. So his Mufti staff was the infiltrators. They was in his Mufti staff. Them the ones who went to his house, drug him out and gave him over to what they call Rome. They look like us. Now, while they got Noble Drew Ali locked up, beating the shit out of him, trying to make him give us the word, Drew, give us the word. They talking about the Masonic password. He don't know it like that. So he can't give it to him if he want to, but he wasn't gonna never give it to him no matter how bad they beat him. So he ended up suffering from complications of the beating, and then they gave him a melanated sister that poisoned him. Then she blamed it on his pale-skinned wife. So now Noble Drew Ali took out the picture in 1929. He passed it off to Elijah Muhammad, but he sent another Moorish Grand Sheikh to feign the continuation of the Moorish Science Temple. That's to give Elijah Muhammad at least a 3-year head start to set his shit up. Wow, right? 1933, Nation of Islam come full throttle. Elijah studied up now. In 1926, they exiled Marcus Mosiah Garvey. He left significant work for us to do study. Up, you mighty people, do what you will. Now, when you look up Pan-Africanism, it traced back to it traced back to W.E.B. Du Bois, and it traced back to Marcus Garvey. Both of them, they call him the father of Pan-Africanism. But if you go back further, Pan-Africanism, look for a guy named James Delaney. So he the one starting the Back to Africa movement in the 1800s, the Liberia movement. He looked like us. Okay, now, it's not the same Pan-African movement. But if you're not a student of Garvey, you won't never know that it was a motive behind Garvey telling us to form a confraternity and to form a Pan-African connection, because the Africans got to tell us, they ain't bring y'all from over here. Y'all was already there. If you go back to 2017, 2018, the president of Ghana and the chiefs offered a qualified apology for the slave trade. It's a problem with that. Most people don't know what a qualified apology is. A qualified apology is this: the qualifications in which we need to apologize need to be put on the record. And we will be, willing to support you in anything you do if we found to be guilty. So when I tried to qualify the apology, I found out that we ain't come from over there. We was already here. All of the African scholars that I spoke to from Nigeria, the Sudan, from Ethiopia, from South Africa, I've personally spoke with people from all of these countries, right? They all tell me the same thing. Man, you know a whole lot about Africa and the Pan-African movement, but y'all not from over here. How did you know this? I'm like, what the fuck you mean we ain't from over there? Go back and do your research. You'll find out you was already there. When the Moors got kicked out of Spain, they didn't finally get kicked out until 1611. Okay. But when everything started, they sent Columbus out as an investigator. Okay, so now when they came over here, Chief Pontiac said they gave us a Bible and asked us to pray with them. We took the Bible, prayed with them, bowed our heads. When we raised our head, we had the Bible, they had the land. They said that our elders had such cognitive dissonance because they had never seen a ship before, that they didn't see the ships that came from Africa. There's only one problem with that. We've been trading with West Africa for hundreds of thousands of years. We also, on the west coast of the United States, was trading with Japan and China for thousands of years. So now, how in the fuck we don't know what a boat looked like, a ship? All of a sudden, we forgot what a ship looked like to have cognitive dissonance. That's because it didn't exist. The slave ship that we see, the popular sardine can slave ship, it's a direct overlay for Notre Dame University because it was an academic hatch plot. That's why that ship on May the 5th, 2018, they set it on fire. They burnt that bitch down. So they burned it. That was our cue. That's exactly what it is. So when I'm reviewing the records, I'm like, shit, this shit's not true. It's just not true. Now here go the irony. Last night somebody sent me a video of Baba. Baba was saying all this shit I'm saying. Okay, now the next thing is when they got kicked out of Europe, where did they go first? Al-Maghrib. Al-Maghrib is Northwest Africa. Today it's known as Libya, Tunis, Morocco, and I think it's like 2 more countries. That's where they sent them. Now, when they tell us the story, when they infiltrate the Moors, they tell us this is Northwest Africa and they got a claim to the land over here, right? They saying that the Moroccan Empire is ancient. Morocco was established in the 50s. That's not ancient to me. So before it was Morocco, it was a province of Al-Maghrib. Now, if you can follow the narrative, you can uncover the deception. When they get over here, war ensues. Now remember, Cortez, Spanish conquistador, invasion. What was they say they was looking for? They was looking for Cordoba. Cordoba is called the City of Gold. This is when they unleashed the hordes of conquistadors, blackamoors and Tawny Moors on our land, right? We don't like to talk about the black conquistadors because now we have to deal with the Tudors of Europe, the royal family. Once we deal with them, we know exactly who we dealing with. Exiles from Europe. Well, how did they get to Europe and when did they go to Europe? When they went to Europe, they was called Etruscans and they wasn't called Moor. This was like in BC period to early AD. They didn't get a stronghold to Rome rose to power under Constantine, right? And then they had the Nicene Council to establish the church. For 700 years, they ruled Europe, specifically Spain. So now they call it the golden age of the Moors, but they're not telling you is Egypt had already settled Europe, established Greeks, the Orisha land, what we call Ireland today. It used to be called the Orisha land. So now these Moors is taking the credit for what the Egyptians did. The Etruscans are taking the credit for it, saying that they civilized Europe. But it doesn't remove the imprint that the Egyptians had. But how do they undermine us? Yeah. So now the war that's taking place in Europe got Egyptian priests and European natives fighting against the Etruscans and they loyalists. And this is why you got Moors that range from Black Moor to Tawny Moor. In the middle, you got one that they don't talk about called the Swarthy Moor. Swarthy Moors is the ones that they call olive tone, right? They lighter than me, but they not light-skinned enough to be classified as a Tawny Moor. Over here, they gave us different terms to classify people along the same lines. These terms being mulatto, quadroon, and octroon. They want us to believe that the people that they put up to take the fall, the Coat Seavers, the fall guy, they want us to believe that these motherfuckers crawled out the caves and just whooped our ass. That's not gonna never happen. No mortals are not gonna ever defeat the gods. So you need to reevaluate the story because it got to be gods helping mortals to fend off gods. Okay, so then we go back. Who were the fucking gods? So the Egyptian story, you have to study Akhenaten, and you will know about the priest wars between the Amen priests or the Amun priests and the Aten priests. The Amun priests was the ones that say we can't never let people see who we are lest they rebel against us. So they always hide behind somebody else that they use as a cat's paw. The Aten priests be like, fuck what you talking about. They not gonna rebel against us because we know how to treat people. So the Conjure Wars began that far back. Enki requested Tahuti to set up Egypt, right? Then he talked about his father in the Emerald Tablet, who he talking about. Okay, so his father asked him to, because he needed to block that barrier. If you look at Samaria, where the Anunnaki was landing at, where they had their launch pads at, and you look at the military strategic purpose of Egypt, Egypt was no more than Hollywood to us. It was what you call the gate. It was the gate to the motherland. So he needed us to block the gate. They not gonna never get past us unless something happened where we no longer functional. Kingu, spell asleep, everybody got to have amnesia. The good ones and the bad ones. So that the levels the playing field in the Conjure War. You don't know who you is, I don't know who I am. Let's try to figure it out by reading the morals and the dogma. The ones who follow the dogma and get stuck, they on their own. Because the righteous ones is going to be seeking the moral compass in all things. Where's the balance in this? So now they go from the Maghrib, they start launching out from the motherland to come over in the Western world to seize the city of gold, Cordoba. Right? Now they telling us they bringing slaves, but we wasn't the slaves. The slaves was what they call $5 Indians, was created to usurp the people of the land. And if we don't figure out who we is at the close of the age, guess where we at? The close of the age. Enlil win. If we figure it out, Tahuti, Enki, and Inanna win, or Isis, they win. Because this is how they settle conflicts on Nibiru with the royal families of Nibiru. Whenever they colonize somewhere, you only two ways you can take power. That's through hand-to-hand combat or through a conjure war. They institute the conjure war. All right, now, Noble Ali went in to the Moor Zionist temple of Islam that was in New Jersey. And this is where he found out, because they told him they use pale faces to block institutions. Who are they? The Jewish Defense League and the ADL. The Anti-Defamation League, they always put in what they call Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and Khazarian Jews in leadership positions, but they all taking orders for somebody to look like me and you It's only one thing. They don't work their way to the top. They murder the chief. They murdered the chiefs and the high priests and the priestesses that could tell the story. They bust the whole family up. And then on our tribal community, they bring their people in. And then they say, we the Hopi, we the Choctaw, we the Cherokee. Them motherfuckers ain't none of that shit. But now this is what you call assuming the position of power. So they established this corporate jurisdiction by undermining the original Constitution. Most people didn't know we was operating under two constitutions. As long as you don't know you operating under two constitutions, one is a corporate jurisdiction, right? And one is what we call a de jure jurisdiction. You thinking you follow the same constitution when you calling yourself a citizen, you actually calling yourself a slave. Where do the red and white stripes come from? That's a marker of the Scottish Rite. Red lodge, white faces. The white faces is the cat's paw, but the white also mean royal family in Europe. It don't mean skin color in Europe. It didn't mean skin color until recent times. Yeah, Chief White Wolf. When they talk about a wolf in sheep's clothing, he one of the original chiefs that was signing those treaties on the Dawes Road treaties. Do your research on him. He was old as hell. But remember, wolf in sheep's clothing. What color is a wolf's fleece normally? It's more white than gray. So the one who come in to replace another, look at his relation to the Dawes Roll. It's the most important part because they made him chief under the Dawes Roll. His birth name is John Smith. His Dawes Roll name is Chief White Wolf. They saying these are the ones that was selected. That mean they picked them by hand, right? To meet the criterion or the qualifications of what an Indian was going to be in the future. This is why we wasn't never Indians. This is the creation of the Indian reservation system. We have mirror tribes on every land. The Hopi mirror tribe in Inky's land is called the Zulu. Now over here, the ones who wore their hair as a crown, their hair had to be like the Fuzzy Wuzzy. If you pull up chieftains from Polynesia, you'll see they got afros. That's how they knew who to kill. When you dress like that, they murder you. That means that you can master anything they put in front of you. Scottish Rite, York Rite, Shriners, Knights Templar, you mastered it all. He mastered all that shit. So we talking about ancient races or ancient classification of people being divided into three main parts. Those from Africa, the Negritos is American, the Polynesian Islands, and Japan. And then you start going into your Asians, which was Mongols and Mandarins. Then you start going into your Huns, which you start getting closer to Europe now. The Huns, until they lost to Rome, was the barrier between Europe and the overall Asian society. This is who Rome was fighting. And they was taking their slaves from these groups of people. And also they was taking them from the Ayurvedics of India or the Hindus. Now, these slaves can freely marry each other, but only the most prized of their women can marry into the actual royal family as a concubine. The rest of them did their services to the Etruscans as slaves. These were the nomads that settled Rome that got kicked out of Africa, that crossed over the Pillars of Hercules and settled Spain. They wasn't none of us Moors at that time. They was Etruscans then. But they switched them out later after the fact. They had to switch them out in order to conceal themselves as Amun, the unknown one. Rome wasn't called Rome before they came. Romulus and Remus was suckled by a wolf, a she-wolf. That was their way of saying that we adopted somebody because we was the ones who wore the wolves. The mythology conceals the mystery. The mystery is my story. History is his story. This who Noble Drew Ali had to go get the secrets from. See the guy in the middle with the with a different dress on than everybody else? What is his hands doing? Picture worth 1,000 words, right? Now you see the dude on his right is holding a book. This who Noble Drew Ali got the secrets from. That book that they holding is the Mishnah. And if you notice, it's strategic. This picture is very strategic. Look at the little boy and scroll down and find the dude standing on the right hand. Where is his right hand at? You can't find his right hand, right? Think Pinocchio and Geppetto. So much symbolism in this picture, man. I can't even break it all down in no one sitting. What they talking about is that they was going to use our science to conquer us. Make that shit make sense to me. How you going to take my gun and shoot me with it? I'm not going to never let you do that. So all of this stuff was the foundation to take over the land from the organic people to the land. Mm-hmm. It's a very specific group of a small number that wields great power. You a blood shield. What blood? The bloodline. You the one that's going to take the fall to keep the bloodline safe. They got us believing that the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and the Jewish Defense League is all pale faces. You remember Henry Ford, right? He wrote one called The Wandering Jew. Remember, I told you they used pale faces to block the institutions, right? And we had to invite massive amounts of pale faces to overrun the institution so we can have friendlies, get the information and put it in the public domain. He's one of the ones that came to offer us a insight into what they was keeping concealed in the lodges before he came or before he wrote about it. He was about to publish this book. It's called International Jew. He was about to publish it, and they told him that if he tried to publish it, they would take Ford Motor Company from him. This is what set it off right here. What happened next? They took him to court, told him he was incompetent to run a multinational corporation like Ford Motor Company, and that they need to surrender Ford Motor Company to the government or to the people that was suing him, actually. So what did he do? He fought the case. He won in court. So while Henry Ford, he done published a book now, he in court. They saying he's incompetent and because he didn't have a formal education to run his company. So the guy that was prosecuting the case asked him all of these crazy ass questions about history, math, science, all kind of shit. He kept saying, I don't know. So he never asked him anything that he knew he would know the answer to, right? Henry Ford lawyer is listening. And he know that Henry Ford have scholars that work for him. So when Henry Ford lawyer get up, he said, that man asked you a bunch of difficult questions. How come you didn't know none of that? Right? Yeah. Henry Ford's response was, he asked me a question about history. I'm not a history buff. I don't understand everything about history. But I got a button on my desk that if I push it, a historian gonna come in. I'm gonna ask him the question. He's gonna give me the answer. I don't need to remember that shit. He asked me physics questions. I don't know nothing about physics. I'm not a physicist. But if somebody come in and physics is required, I push a button and the physicist is gonna come in the room to answer whatever the physics question of physics is. He asked me all of these mathematical questions. I'm not a mathematician. But if I got a button on my phone, if I push it, a mathematician to come in and solve any math problem he so choose to put on the board. I'm Henry Ford. I run Ford Motor Company. That's the only thing I know how to do. So anytime that your competence come under question, they're calling you an imbecile in law. An imbecile has no right to property he don't know how to manage. This is what they trying to use in their judicial system to wrestle the company from him. But he's telling them is that I'm not incompetent, nor am I incompetent to your system. Therefore, I can administer my own affairs. I'm not a ward of the state. He was actually challenging jurisdiction at that point. The whole judicial system is predicated upon the fact that we are all imbeciles in law. the Pope declared everybody in the world incompetent, that they were all wards of the Pope as imbeciles in law by papal bulls in the 1300s. This is called the execution of the white man's burden. Henry Ford is telling them that the white man's burden doesn't apply to him because he's competent to run his own affairs. This is what makes him win the case automatically. He's no longer an imbecile in law. He just proved it because he's letting them know he's competent enough to manage his own affairs. Right now, we're going to go to another book. We're going to go to Protocols of the Wise Men of Zion. Now, this is one of the, I think Henry Ford published this to let everybody know this is the art of war for the oppressors that's coming to oppress us, or that came to oppress us, actually. This they art of war. This is their marching orders. This is the definition of how they're supposed to proceed. So William Cooper got it reprinted in the Behold the Pale Horse. If you look, they're going to be covering a couple of key points to control the society at large of the Goyim. Dr. Neely Fuller wrote the counter because he knew it's a thinking war. If it's a thinking war, all of their strategies in this book has to be countered. He the one told me, if you want to know what's going on, you got to look at the whole situation from the eyes of the warden of a prison. He said, if you look at it any other different way, you're going to miss critical aspects. But most people don't know what a warden would see in a prison, right? The warden know every fart made in that motherfucker. The warden know. Half the COs don't know, but the warden know. Right? Now, if I understand that, then I know that the warden has to have infiltrators in here somewhere. The warrior got to have inmates on his payroll, which he do. And this informant is going to give them information that none of the other population is privy to, including the guards. So this person is going to be a motherfucker that can skate all around the prison and never get a ticket. And if one of the COs have a problem with him, he get transferred to another institution. If you know that somebody is in the prison keeping all the things in the prison in the awareness of the warden, then whoever it is in the warden seat of earth got motherfuckers relaying him messages. So now we playing Find Waldo. But how do we find Waldo in this scenario? Sit back, observe, and don't say shit. Okay, so now to find out who would be, go to Switzerland. Now, their last war was with who? The French, right? Okay, now, who did the New Orleans Purchase? Who was the holder of the protectorate agreement? The French. That's the same people that the last war of the Swiss was, right? They sold New Orleans protectorate right to England. England decided that because we had left our villages and our homesteads to go fight the Seminole War, they declared everything vacant and abandoned. So we got a sidebar for a second because I got to give you a little back reference. With the Etruscan Moors didn't only settle Spain. They settled Rome, which is the capital of Italy, or they conquered it. And they conquered Paris. Paris was the city of Isis. Isis, it's actually the Parthodon of Isis is the name of the city. Who built the Eiffel Tower? The French, right? Because it's right there in France. Same person that gave us the Statue of Liberty, right? Okay, now, remember, the last Swiss war, they were fighting the so-called French. The Spanish, the Dutch, Portuguese, and the English, all of these countries are in the process of purging the Moors from Europe to send them to the Maghreb. The people who's still running the show would stay out of all of the wars because they the financiers. Okay, now the French turned tail from the Americas and left it with the English. They got their ass kicked in Detroit by Chief Pontiac, right? They what you call, that's called constricting. Military force is constricting now. That means everybody's drawing back home. If you know military history, not unless you are victorious do you call your troops home. You fight to the death. And the only way you don't fight to the death is when you're down to the last soldier and you got to save at least one. The trade unions was put together, predicated upon the what we call skilled trades workers. The skilled trades was taught hands-on and passed down normally in families. And it was a certain amount of control they have over their life by learning the skilled trade. This is what makes their union slightly different than a regular union. So Big Mama used to keep track of which of her sons to call for specialty work. These formations is what they call workers' guilds, right? Workers' guilds have to be communicated across all other guilds so that they don't overstep their boundaries. So they form a fraternal brotherhood of guilds, and they call it a workers' union. The unified workers come together to control their life and their destiny. The goal of a guild is to be able to control the inflation rate that is put on your labor. The only way to control the inflation rate is you have to have negotiating power with the banks, that's the developers who sets up corporations to be operators of their asset. That's how it worked. Lewis and Clark was land surveyors. They came in to, it was after the Louisiana Purchase, somebody had to traverse the land and map it out. And during the course, they have to keep a star map and a diary. Star map is going to tell them the extent of the land and the amount of time it takes to traverse the land and read these stars. You can read the whole lay of the land. So they know about the Rocky Mountains all the way into the northwestern ports of New Orleans, of Washington and Oregon, right? All the way into the tail of Alaska. So now they stopped, I think, in either Oregon or Washington State. And then they turned around and came back. The return trip, you mark your days, keep your diary, and you map the stars on your trip back to, and this is called self-correcting in the science. Correct itself if one of your days is off, it'll self-correct on the return trip if you keep accurate position. They need a navigator. Wasn't no pale skin navigators at that time. Christopher Columbus' navigator name was Peter del Negro or Pietro del Negro. Peter the nigger or Peter the black. They look like us, but they ain't us. Now remember what's taking place in Europe when Christopher Columbus is getting ready to make his journey. They are gathering resources from some Jews to finance the voyage. In Europe, Jews has nothing to do with Hebrews, Judaism, or anybody from the Middle East. The Jews is the reference to the blackamoors who's running the show. Pietro del Negro being a navigator, in order for him to be a navigator at that time, was well aware of the Americas. Okay, so what's Christopher Columbus doing when he leaves? What is his intended purpose? This is what he tell Ferdinand and Isabella. I know a better trade route to somewhere called India, but at this time, India doesn't exist, right? And when I make this other voyage, across the pillars of Hercules is where Atlantis is, right? Okay, now he's telling her, when I make this voyage, I'll find a shortcut to India and set up trade routes. India don't exist yet. There's no country at this time called India. He have to have a navigator for his ship. At the time, only the Etruscan Moors were navigators. So that means that they already know what's out there beyond the sea. Okay, now, so if he's going to set up trade routes with some people from India, wherever the fuck that supposed to be at, he's supposed to find them by sailing across the water to the west. You right? They did tell him that if you sail too far to the west, you're going to fall off the earth, right? He was like, no, we're not going to fall off the earth. Now remember, Peter the Black is the navigator. This is what most people don't know. The navigator is the real leader on the ship. The captain is actually the second in charge. The navigator is the most important person on the ship. Without the navigator, you're going around in circles. So now, who's getting kicked out of, they're getting ready to start the Spanish Inquisition to purge Europe of these Moors. Who are they? They the Jews. The Jews is a royal family called Tudors. They was named Jews because they were the models of the jewelry that they would give the people that were their subjects to wear on their lapel pin in public. So that when they cross, like for instance, if one of my people cross your path, so you just don't take her as your wife, you need to see her lapel pin. You'll know what family and clan, and now you know who to ask about her in order to see if she's available. So they wear the Jews. The Jews is the jewelry that represent the Tudors, who is the Amun, or the unknown royal family, or the concealed royal family in Europe. Once they get into Switzerland, you seen when they last fought a war, now they got control of what you call international banking network. The network is not new. Now we go into find out why they got kicked out of Europe. We had to be able to identify why they got kicked out. So now what we looking at is the motive that they got kicked out takes us straight to something called Babylonian blood magic. When they was trying to kick them out of Europe, that statue was built to tell the story into the future, what they was doing. The statue is there for what you call architectural reading. According to religion, where do the devils supposed to come from? They originated in heaven. What happened to them in heaven? They got kicked out. Why they get kicked out? They tried to overthrow God. All right, now, that ended up sending them where? To Earth. So that means that if they own Earth, they came from someplace called heaven, Nibiru, this Enlil. Now remember, he's telling Jacob he's going to promise him some land. They don't got no land. Why would they not have any land? They're not from here, because everybody from here got land because we tied to it. Jacob, what do Jacob mean? Supplanter, underminer. Okay, what's the story of Jacob? So they intended to describe exactly what Esau looked like. All right. Now, what's Jacob's name again mean? Supplanter, right? He said he came out holding on to his brother's heel. So his brother is Achilles. The Achilles story finds his weakness being his Achilles tendon on his heel, right? That's his weakness. Jacob is grabbing Esau, the red man, according to his weakness at his Achilles tendon. So they telling you that Jacob is undermining, he's cutting him off at the ankles, and he's catching him by the heel. What did he do when he came out? He tricked him out his birthright. Who's the trickster, right? Why is he tricking him? He's trying to get the birthright, right? Obviously, if Jacob is trying to steal the birthright from Esau, the hairy red man or the red-haired man, which is really a red-haired woman, which is really Scotta, the Irish princess, the red-haired princess, who gets treated like shit as the redhead stepchild of Europe. Now, what they do, why is they call her the stepchild? She the one gets stepped on. Who's stepping on her? Everybody else that thinks she less than. She's the black sheep, right? All these stories tie together, right? So she the black sheep, she the one cast out. She's the rightful heir to the throne by birthright. So Jacob don't have a birthright right. So how do he try to get it? Undermine his brother. He tricked him for a bowl of soup. That means his brother was hungry. He manipulated him on an empty stomach. Instead of be my brother's keeper and give his brother a bowl of soup to feed and nourish him, he put conditions on it, a contract. That was for what we call his living trust. And I'm gonna show you in a minute how we know the difference in the two trusts. So he tricked him out of the living trust, so Esau left to go wander in the land. So Jacob stays home with his father, Isaac, and his mother. This is the right to stay home versus the right to leave. Esau got kicked out the house by his brother Jacob. So his father got to give a declaration, put it in the public domain, speak it out his mouth, that I give you my birthright, right? So now Esau's not there. The father is aware that Esau is the rightful heir. What do his mother do? She dressed him up in the fur coat and made him this favorite soup that Esau used to make him, right? He's flipping the soup back to his father in the conversion deal to seal the undermining of the birthright. Enlil's children don't got no birthright to nothing on earth because they ain't from here, right? So this lady that had twins, apparently one of them wasn't from the same father because they was fundamentally different, obviously at birth, which we know from science that a woman can give birth to twins from two separate fathers. Enlil's son and Isaac's son is obviously different in appearance, and Isaac, before his sight go, knows the difference. Yeah. So he know that the first one out, Esau, was his as soon as he seen him. The red hairy was the description. That's why they emphasize his name to be Edom. Edom, and that is also implying blood, Adama. Edom is the root word to Adama. They just slightly spelled different in the Hebrew language. So he's giving the blood right in a blood soup. He's using the blood right ritual to steal the birthright from his brother Esau, the red man. The loop is because it's going to replay until somebody figure it out to unravel it. So the conquistadors get kicked out of Europe, set sail for the so-called New World to establish their empire once they claim the birthright of Esau, the red man. Here's the thing that we didn't catch. They repeating the story on our land. The Jacobins are the black Jews. Yeah. Dr. Ben wrote the book, We the Black Jews, or the Black Jacobins is what it was originally titled, meaning the underminers off the Red Lodge is coming for the birthright. The first thing they did when they got here is they gave us a Bible, right? We don't know how to read the fucking contract because they told us it was a religion. It's been our spirituality weaponized against us. They gonna play the contract out in real life in your face, but you're not gonna never see it because it's the actual pushing of the players on the earth using the book as the rule book. Okay, now this is called the sensationalization of a story. Everything that they saying, they sensationalizing something that they don't want you to pay attention to. Don't look over here behind the curtain, right? Look at me over here doing the goofy move and don't look behind that curtain. Focus on what I'm doing. It's a sleight of hand trick. Because as soon as they got us to pray with them, they was making the agreement to tie us to the contract of the Bible, using Levi, the tribe of Levi, to enforce it using a system of levies and liens. Now, traditionally, we are a oral, traditional people. The law of the land made our verbal contract equally as binding as the written contract. A handshake was all we needed to seal the deal. And in some cultures, you exchange blankets. In other cultures, you exchange a spear for a battle axe. And sometimes you would trade daughters to marry to the prince so y'all can have a family connection. And this is called tying into the vine. Now you trying to tie into the bloodline of the main royal family, and you using deception to do it. Elijah Muhammad say the last trick of the devil was to do what? Yeah. So they gonna try to slide a female up under you at the end to lead you off your path on purpose. You got different tribes that believe different shit, right? And the chiefs honor the traditional exchange of the other chief. So whatever their agreement was, he gave Maisha as the wife or concubine to seal that deal. It's a pedophile blood right ritual he got tricked into that's right in the Talmud, and it's a Babylonian money magic ritual. Now they using pedophilia against a man who wasn't a pedophile in order to deceive him into following the order of sin by default out of ignorance. Remember, ignorance is no excuse to the law. So now Muhammad then upset the balance without even knowing what he did, because he was deceived by somebody that he looked at as an equal in Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr's intent was to always overthrow Muhammad. How do we know that was his intent? What was the first thing he did when Muhammad died? 24 hours later, he went to seize power. So it all ties back into how they was doing us over here, using all of those events as the template to overlay us and play it out on us without us knowing it. Now, watch how the story play out. They want us to claim that we the tribes of Israel, and we was never called nothing related to that before 1492. So they want us to follow them by saying we them, tribes of Israel. Once we do that, then they're gonna say we are the organic people to the earth right here. They don't even have to say that at their point. They can declare victory by means of deception and military negotiations. Because under the Anunnaki Code of War, all forms of deception is a viable form to the art of war in order to avoid the physical conflict. The deception is the judicial system. The tribe of Judah is the ones who's over the judicial system. And now each one of the tribes of the so-called children of Israel has to also have a family bank. Each one of the families set up a bank, and the first bank was set up in the crash zone in the 10 square miles called Washington, D.C. When they came over here in a shipwreck, 10 square mile crash site, set up the first bank. They mapped out the territory, laid down a family's claim to each one of the portions so that at the close of the age, they can say they us, organic to the land, and that because we can't be competent in law to manage our own affairs. So this is how they claiming our shit. Now, these banks all feed into the Bank of Switzerland. Okay, now, remember we started off with the question, when was the last time Switzerland was at a war? We tracked these Etruscan Moors all the way over here to set up the banks so that they can seize the land from us, these damn black devils. We had already established that they use pale faces to block institutions. So we overran institutions with friendly pale faces in order to get the secrets out. We tracking the money and we trying to find out where these motherfuckers at that's behind all the dirt. Okay, now, I done told you who they was. I done showed you their movements. Now, the only thing now is all of this war, these 3 world wars and all this shit, from that point on, they would have to be hands off clean. One of the Rothschilds had to speak out and say that they financed both sides of the wars. So it's not a secret that the whoever it is behind it all is financing all of the war and confusion on Earth. They paying for it because it's all organized, right? So now, when you look at who's pulling the strings of the politicians over here, the Jewish Anti-Defamation League and the JDL. They the ones controlling all of our politicians because that's their stage show of the political arena. That's the story they want the public to follow so that they can remain anonymous. They probably have been arrested now because they got to leave here. Galactically, they got to go. The Enlil's children lost the war. They normally honor the galactic rules. Once they lose, they normally follow through and pack up their bags and leave. Remember, they say in the book, separating the wheat from the chaff, but they talking about people. While we was going through the Conjure War, they wanted it concealed, and they had what you call upper position or prime position on the game. As the attackers, they set the rules. This is their agreement, their secret agreement behind the scenes. The tribe of Levi operate on the systems of levy and liens. They have to write the laws or it wouldn't be any laws on the books. This is going back to the tutors of Europe, the royal family, right? Now you see where it say, where the feathers, it says Bey, governors of the land, enforces laws of Elohim, executive branch. When you look at the picture, you can clearly see that they are faced off with each other, face to face. So this putting it in the public domain that is the feathers versus the fezzes. If you look under it, you'll see a pine tree on the white background of a red flag. And then on the other side, you see the 5-point Moroccan flag. Then you have the Washita flag in the middle. Remember, George Washington chopped down the cherry tree. Now, there is no cherry tree in the equation, but they say it's the flag. Pull George Washington up to see what the agreement was. All right, if we would agree to take the fezzes and turbans off the Moor's head, this is the part where something missing, and remove the sandals from their feet. First of all, when they came over here, they didn't wear sandals. We, the ones with the feathers, wore the sandals, but there's no mention of the feathers here. When you go into it, it says, and we remove the sandals from their feet and enforce severe punishments, right? And to also swear a death oath between ourselves to religiously and faithfully not to allow anyone to teach the Moorish children. Now, notice this is the catch term, because we're going to all end up tracing ourselves back to Moors based on this agreement here. But can we get past that? It requires genetic memory. So teach the Moorish children who they really were or who their forefathers were. What did Noble Drew Ali say? You are what your forefathers were without a doubt or contradiction. Here they telling us that they're not going to let us know who we really are, nor going to allow us to know who our forefathers were. And only allow the Moorish children to be taught that they were truly Negroes, Black people, colored folks, 200 years from today. So that's a definite time frame fixed to this agreement. 200 years from today, the Moorish people would not know their nationality nor the national name of their forefathers. Also, they would not know from which land or ancestors that they are descended from. When you read that, most people gonna overlook the part where it says, and they would not know from which land. I'm organic to this one. Or ancestry. We organic to this land. We are organic people to this land. And that they are descended from. So they were saying that if they mix our kids up together and mistreat them for 200 years, we wouldn't be able to know us from them, right? So that's what that agreement is. Now, remember I told you they was cheap and they was using murder. Now remember, they already swore a blood oath. This is the oath of secrecy for the murder of kings, princes, and the people, and carrying out devilish and hellish designs for subverting the Protestant religion in England and Ireland. So when they made this blood oath, this is the oath to kill a group of people. And these people have natural kings and princes in their bloodline. And it also say, and their people. This is the oath to kill us. So whenever we start to stand out in society, that's how they know who we is, and that's when they murder us. They also go by our birth dates because they can track us by birth dates because they know the science of the times. Papist's most wicked and bloody oath of secrecy. That's talking about the church, the Catholic Church. When I was telling you, they put all this stuff in the public domain. Okay, now let's go see what Mr. Rockefeller got to say about the secret oath. Now, this is still a continuation of that agreement that George Washington talking about. Now, remember, these are just front people for the Black nobility of Europe that came over here. So it say, we will always hide the divine truth from them, that we are all one, that he must never know. They must never know the color is an illusion. They must always believe they are not equal. This is the white supremacy doctrine. Drop by drop, we will advance our goal. What was their goal? To make us confused as to who we was in order to steal this land. So that was their goal. We will take over their lands, resources, and wealth to exercise control over them. We will trick them into accepting laws that will steal the little freedom that they have. We will set up a money system that will shut them down forever, keeping them and their children in debt. This is their agreement. This is the people that is telling them, because they have to put it in the public domain. It say, we are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. That's so the press been privy to the construct that they was operating under false pretenses for 40 years. This is what he's telling us. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the likes of publicity during those years. Secret squirrel shit. Now remember, all this is being done in secret, but they got to put it in the public domain for you to find it. Because they got to tell you what they doing to you. So right now we going over what their plan was and where they told us what the plan was. And then we're going to show you when they lost and they gave it all back in the Indigenous Rights Act. He said, but the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practice in past centuries. Notice he used the word auto-determination. That's another way of saying autonomy, independence, sovereign capacity, right? So now we know that they're killing the kings and the princes, and now we know why they're killing them, for the land. And now they telling you that the media is being used as a tool to implement the work. Okay, so that's the Rockefellers. What do the Rothschild got to say about it? He said, I care not what puppets is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. That's what they call the English Empire, because they had conquered as far as they was aware of to the east and to the west. So they said the empire that the sun never sets on. So they had a dog in every fight. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply. Nathan Rothschild. It was another one, William Amhel Rothschild, is famous for saying, if I can control the money, I care not who make your laws. From this, they telling you bankers are the ones that's going to be buying their way into positions of power to subjugate the organic people to this land. We ain't never supposed to figure out that they look like us, but they not us. Let's go to the other Rothschild. I am Lord Jacob Rothschild. You do not know me, but I am the most powerful man in the world and head of the Rothschild banking clan. We own your Federal Reserve, private corporation over here. Your media, we just seen them taking control of the media. Government, the government is a corporation. Political parties, which are also sub-corporations, and your money, your fiat, because they controlling the true wealth. For over 200 years, we have funded both sides of every war. There go that 200 years again. This goes back to the morals and dogma of Albert Pike when he told you the whole fucking plan. He said, my family has a net worth of $500 trillion. Every dollar produced is an IOU to my family. They talking about the Fed and the interest rate on the dollar, which generates the national debt out of thin air. This is what he's talking about. We paying to rent the paper used as currency when we could be printing our own. The entire planet owes us a debt they can't pay back. That means it's an impossible debt. How do you resolve an impossible debt? You foreclose the account. You have to close the account to stop the debt. So I done already posted on my Facebook and Instagram where Donald Trump closed the Fed in 2018. Okay, so he say we own nearly every central bank in the world. So what do we have to do? Decentralize the bank. Before 9/11, 7 countries did not have a central bank under our rule. Now there are 3 left to invade: Iran, North Korea, and Cuba. Now get back to work, slave. They telling you. We know what they did. They got caught. They got apprehended for fraud, for the world's biggest Ponzi scheme, right? They scamming everybody at the bottom out of the money while they keeping it all to the 1%. They telling you the methodology they using, how they keeping us from protesting or using the superior jurisdiction to overcome their legal fiction. Now, this is Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati. There is no way of influencing men so powerful as by means of the women. So they know the influence the women have. These should therefore be our chief study the women. We should insinuate ourselves into their good opinion, give them hints of emancipation from the tyranny of public opinion. They're talking about women's liberation right here. This is the Women Live movement. And of standing up for themselves. It will be an immense relief to their enslaved minds to be freed from any one bond of restraint, and it will fire them the more and cause them to work for us with zeal without knowing that they do so, for they will only be indulging their own desire of personal admiration. This is telling you that they're going to use the woman's vanity and weaponize it against her in order to drive her out of the home and into the workforce so they can tax both sexes. This is what this is about. When you pull up Adam Weishaupt, this is the drawing of him, but also this comes up. If you see, that's George Washington to the right side of the screen right there. And that's Albert Pike without the beard. But all of these is the same motherfucker. That's who was behind the dirt, the Scottish Rite Lodge was the one that was taken over by Enlil kids. They got something called the Isle of Man between, it's over there in the lake by London, not too far from London, right? But you need to look that up because one of the definitions of Moor is an officer of the court of the Isle of Man, which takes us back to the first picture, the feathers versus the pheasants, right? Now, Adam Weishaupt is supposed to have been French, and he was supposed to have written the founding documents of the Illuminati. They paint him as a pale guy, but the guy behind the scenes, we not seeing him, right? So they got to flip us mirrors. This is called mirror flips. You would never figure out that Adam Weishaupt is the fake George Washington imposter who changed his name to Albert Pike when he got to America. You remember they was hunting Adam Weishaupt down in Europe. Yeah. So when they was hunting him down over there, where you think he went? And this your French connection. They send us the Statue of Liberty. It's a man dressed in drag holding a torch and a book, Mona Lisa. It's telling you the story without telling you the story. Now, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was originally called the Paris Accord. They built a steel tower as a memorial over there, and the name of it is I Failed. The plot was hatched in France, in Paris. The city Paris is Parthénon of Isis, which really means the city of Isis. So now you see your French connection reveals in the city, because there's also a Paris, Illinois, a Paris, Michigan, and there's several other cities called Paris. The Zulu tribe is the mirror tribe to the Hopi over here. And they are also the mirror tribe in Asia to what we know as the Mongols or the Khans, right? That's why you got Khan, Mansa Musa, then you got Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan. Right? These are mirroring family lineages. This is why they name their children after each other, so they can mirror the family member they most admire. So if he have a prosperous life and I mirror him, I'm going to have a prosperous life too, because we're doing the same thing from a different angle, right? But everybody don't got the same job and everybody can't perform the same function. All of the illumination which human reason can give, none is comparable to the discovery of what we are, our nature, our obligations, what happiness we are capable of, and what are the means of attaining it. This is him talking about the temperament of the people whose bloodline this is, right? Because they look like us, we think they feel about us the way we feel about them, but they don't. They declare war on us, swore to eradicate us, and said that if they didn't kill us all off, you know what I'm saying, that's the only way they could win is kill us all off or we forfeit. The most wonderful thing of all is that the distinguished Lutheran and Calvinist theologians who belong to our order really believe that they see in it, Illuminati, the true and genuine sense of Christian religion. O mortal man, is there anything you cannot be made to believe? This ain't Enlil talking. This how they move. This how their family move. We don't move like this. Now he's telling you right here that they didn't convince these mortals to believe, and they telling them that is there anything that you can't be convinced to believe? Like, if you believe this bullshit we telling you, you believe anything. The Jesuit oath. Oh yeah, this is a good one. I further promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever their execrable race. That when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisoned cup. What's the poison cup? Communion. A simulated blood ritual to keep you locked into the energy of practicing blood rites that drag your vibration down. A poison cup. The strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed so to do by any agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. That's the name of the Jesuit order, the Society of Jesus. Now you just see what they said. They're gonna figure out a way to kill and murder your ass. That go back to the Pope, the secret agreement of the Pope to murder the kings and the princes. This is all of what they call Roman law. This is in the Roman archive. This is the Roman law that they executed. They put it in the public domain so we can read it, right? Now, if you go back to the 70s, when you see the Weather Underground and the Black Liberation Army and all them making agreements, right? What you're not seeing is the agreements being made on an international level with the IRA and various other groups that's overseas fighting the same enemy we fight. So we able to use the mirrors so that we can all seize power at the same time around the world back to the people of Earth. Tell you when you read about the 13 colonies that they came over here with Bibles. That's not a secret. It wasn't no Muslims or no Hebrews over here yet. Hebrews was the backstory that was written hundreds of years after Christianity because people started asking questions. So they went and wrote a backstory, then they called it the Hebrew religion or Israeli religion, right? Where we still as Israel today wasn't Israel before 1948. 3 countries made that Israel: America, France, and England. Those were the original 3 signers to the United Nations. And they set that up based on something called the Balfour Declaration. Look it up. The Balfour Declaration was an order from one of the fake Jews to establish the state of Israel if they supported France in World War I, which they did, and they won. And when they won, they was sucking the money out of Germany. So Hitler launched a counterattack against the French, which led to World War II. And World War I saw the failure of the League of Nations. All this shit is verifiable. You can check it up word by word. Look this shit up. After the League of Nations failed, when World War II came, they vowed to establish another League of Nations, and they called it the United Nations. The first countries to sign on as a United Nations member was France, England, and the United States. This is part of your Illuminati advance of the Skull and Bones Society, of the Scottish Rite, who was controlled by Black nobility of Europe, right? So this is bringing the power George Herbert Walker Bush, right? Because he's a banker, but he's also a trainee in espionage and became a CIA agent, which he ended up becoming the director after the assassination of JFK. He promised Lyndon B. Johnson that he could make him president, and he in return wanted to be the director of Central Intelligence. Go look up who made George Herbert Walker Bush the director of the CIA. So he went from being a lowly agent now to the running the operation. Now all he got to do is wait for the only person more powerful than him to die, LBJ, because he the one put him in power. So what do? They have to disgrace the office first. How do they do that? Watergate. Richard Milhouse Nixon. Now Nixon was he was Amish, and they're not supposed to participate in politics. So we ain't watching the long game, and we sure not too good at watching the short one. The gig is up. The corporation failed. Before they failed, they gave you the right to restore all of the land, the territories, right, back to the original people and the resources. If you don't know what the resources is, you don't understand the value of that statement. So you got to look up gross domestic product, gross national product. Look at how much oil the United States have on reserve from Texas and Oklahoma that they've been pumping. Alaskan pipeline oil, that shit not for sale. They can borrow against it, fiat, but they can't sell it because it don't belong to them. That's in the Uniform Commercial Code. In the Uniform Commercial Code, if you have another's property, you can use it to supply your living expenses, but when it's discovered, you have to return it. You think we discovered it? You think they returned it? Power sees nothing without a demand. And if you don't know, Juneteenth. If you don't know, you can't exercise your freedom. If you don't know that all we have to do is unify, come together in our sovereign capacity as individuals. That forms the power structure. Awareness is the critical mass we're trying to reach. Awareness of specifically our people who's organic to this land that didn't come on no goddamn ships. We not black, we not from Asia, and we not Moors. We organic to the land over here, the house of Tahuti. That's who this is over here. This is the house of Thoth, the great Thunderbird, Quetzalcoatl, however you want to call it. And if you don't understand that, then you don't even know where you at. You don't even know what you into. Then you should not be saying much. See, they don't want to acknowledge that part because they would realize it's just a catch term. It's the same as they call a person from the Middle East a saying nigga, right? It's the same way. You a nigga in America, you a saying nigga in the Middle East, right? A nigga still a nigga. They calling you what they calling you. We didn't name ourselves Moors. Somebody else named us Moors. Remember, in the Indigenous Rights Act, it said you must self-identify. It even tell you when you research the word who was calling who Moor and why they was calling them that. And they was calling the ones from Al-Maghrib, the Moors. The Etruscans, when they went into Europe, they came out as Moors, right? And they attacked on two fronts. They went into original conquest as Turks, Ottoman Empire, Byzantine kings, right? That's from the east. But when they got kicked out of Africa, they went and settled in Spain. And they got their strongholders in Switzerland now. That's why Switzerland is not in any war. You've seen the Rothschild document where he said for the last 200 years, they've been funding both sides of every war. If you funding both sides of it, you're gonna be in the country that's gonna be untouched by it, ain't you? And who was the last people that fought the Swiss? The French, right? So that's the French connection. You see, so when France won, they they sent all of their black nobility to Switzerland. Nobody ain't gonna look for nobody look like me and you in Switzerland, but they there, been there. Some of them is in Russia, some of them is in Ukraine. They all through there Khazarian Mafia is what they call them now. When you trace the Khazars back, you're going to end up pre-Russian country called Prussia, spelled with a P. In Prussia, in the highlands of Prussia was called the Khazar. And that's the home of the Khazarians, which is the black nobility who used the pale faces to conceal their dirt. I know exactly who the fuck they is, who did what. I can't do nothing but tell y'all. It's up to y'all whether y'all spread the word, each one teach one, and we get to the understanding of this shit is over with when y'all say it's over with in large enough number. It's about us getting out there saying, hey, they gave us the reparations as organic people to the land, tied to the land. Once we do that, we get all of our price of gas gonna drop because we got so much motherfucking, they've been pumping for 45 years. Long as they've been pumping, probably longer, since they've been pumping in the Middle East. Mexican-American War was about oil territory, about exploiting resources. It was about the gold rush, right? All that's the same land. They talking about illegal immigrants. The motherfuckers belong there.